Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and this is your reaction to that hard-earned point at home against Forest this weekend. Scott Parker's young Clarets battling back from a very early goal to secure themselves a well-earned point against a side that are much better than their league position and the headlines would suggest. I am joined by very popular and very, very regular analyst, Rich Steele, to look back on that game and give us his thoughts. Rich, let's dive straight in here. You flew over, you brought the Irish weather with you, a very, very, very rainy Turf Moor. Kick us off. What did you make of that point?
Yeah, I think it was one of those games, without sounding too cliche, where it definitely could have gone either way. Obviously, we got off to a terrible start, didn't we? And you're kind of fearing the worst. And again, we show really good character to come back into the game. And I think this is something I wasn't quite expecting at the start of the season, was for us to really, look good in the attacking parts of the pitch overall and creating chances. There's still definitely room for improvement in the final third. But like I said, I thought either side of half-time, I thought we were the better team.
Yeah, we
created chances. Obviously, Shawana with that free kick. Anthony had a gilt edge opportunities, a few crosses coming across the box, which we didn't get on the end of. And then I think as you see him as the game progressed, obviously a bit of a talking point on Twitter is the substitutions, and maybe Parker could have utilised it earlier. But I think the difference in Forest's bench was meant that in the last 15 minutes or so, they really come on strong and we tired. Yeah. Again, there's arguments to bring subs on. But ultimately, I think obviously Ukachoglu was suspended, but past the starting 11, obviously there might maybe Hannibal and obviously we signed Broge and Fleming, but there is that lack of quality.
I agree.
Maybe was that the game with 15, 20 minutes to go to bring Edwards on and really try and go and win the game. But I think after those disappointing, last minute goals at United and Liverpool, I think to lose that game late on would have been another kick in the teeth. I think if we managed to get draws in those games, Parker might have gone for it a little bit more. So I don't blame him for kind of being solid late on. And Dubravka obviously made a couple of outstanding saves later on in the game. Hartman made a great block as well, which for, when it seemed destined to go in. So I think all in all, I think we can't argue with a point, but it's definitely on another day. There's probably going to be at some point in the season, though, where those type of games, we've got to turn 1 point into 3.
Right. Yeah, we absolutely do. Well, let me pick up on something that you've said there, because this was something that I was saying at the end of the game and was very on my mind straight after the game. And it links to the quality of the bench, and it links to substitutions, and it links to the difference between the squad that Forest had and the squad we have now. Let me be very clear here. I think this starting 11 is potentially one of the best we've ever had in the Premier League. I think we've made some really great signings and we've got some real quality there. But whilst we've got an excellent starting 11, maybe 13, like you say, when some of the players that are the slightly more fringe players and they're not the starting lineup come on, I can see the difference in quality, and I can see some players that played for us last season that just don't seem to, like, you can tell the difference in quality with what we've bought now compared to what we had. The thing that's really apparent for me, and I think this was where we ended up falling foul against United and Liverpool, we look absolutely knackered at 80 minutes. We are putting our hearts and souls into this game, which is exactly what we wanted and exactly what was missing a couple of years ago. But we had a really young side on at Saturday who just played for the badge, and Kyle Walker dragged them all across, and it was just a really strong performance. 80 minutes, Rich, they did look completely done. And that's where I think we are going to have to start thinking about those late mistakes, right? That surely when you're mentally and physically tired as that, I mean, you're a coach, you played, that must be really challenging to try and either turn those points to victories or try and retain the point if you've got it.
Yeah, I think that's where it goes back to. If we scored one of those earlier chances, it's obviously different if you go 2-1 up, but with them tight games, I don't think we've quite got enough maybe late on to go and get the winner. Maybe as the season progresses and we get used to the physicality and intensity of the Premier League, where, we might be able to. But yeah, and I think it's always more difficult when you've not got the ball. God, and it was a tough, and obviously it was the weather conditions were tough. And I think there's been a lot of talk around Anthony. And I think obviously 3 goals this season. He's had a great return, but he has looked out on his feet. So he's at a position where maybe Edwards could come on, but he clearly doesn't trust Edwards in those tight games to do the defensive work. But then maybe another argument could be to bring like Perez on down that left, for example, possibly. So I think it's something that it's obviously not easy, when you don't have that ball. But yeah, it's definitely an issue for us as the game goes on. And obviously we're going to have Okachoglu back in the squad this weekend. And does he come straight into the starting 11, or is he going to be on the bench and coming in off the bench? I think Hannibal's one where we was hoping he'd really kick on, and in my opinion, he's struggled to adapt.
I agree.
But like you said, I don't want to go back to the Liverpool game. We can't really blame Hannibal's tiredness for that handball. That was just a bit of a moment of madness. So I think, like you said, we're giving everything. I think the points return, we're unlucky to not have more points, and I think that's a good sign. And obviously, I don't want to skip too far ahead, but we kind of got a free hit against City at the weekend.
Yeah, we do.
I think our fixtures are looking a little bit more favourable after that. So yeah, it's definitely an issue, and I think it's that balance, isn't it, between attack and defence. Some people will say, well, we should have gone for it. Forest's defence was a little bit susceptible, to the counter-attack. And there's others who might say, no, we did the right thing and kind of just holding on to that point. And I'm kind of in that last bracket of I was just happy to get a point at the weekend after a couple of disappointing late goals.
I think I share that view. And I think what was very, very clear from the off is that no matter what the clickbait headlines and the narrative would have you suggest, this is not a struggling Forest side. They've got some upheaval. They're not in as strong a position as they would have liked to have been. But this is a side that were phenomenal last season. And my goodness, do they have some quality. We're going to come on to this in a little while. But just the goal itself with players who will see a position and just not hesitate and strike with an absolute thunderbolt. I mean, and we talked about this in the Liverpool reaction video. We do look a little bit exposed in midfield with this insistence and dropping, Laurent into the central defence. So we were a man short in midfield, and it did allow, I thought, Forest to really control that midfield again. And we never really seemed to get the second ball, or we seemed to lose possession quite quickly, and it was a bit of a challenge. How do you think, bearing that in mind, like I say, because of the formation, it's a little bit difficult to judge this, but the midfield ended up being a straight swap between Ugochukwu and Lewis coming in. His first proper game where we've seen him play a prolonged period. I thought he looked real quality. I'm really impressed. But how did he look to you?
Yeah, I'm going to try and answer that question in 2 parts in terms of come back to Luis. I think obviously we've dropped Laurent back in there, and it's given us that little bit more defensive security because at United away we actually was really open. And I think, unfortunately, it's a really difficult one because you kind of go, right, do you go 3 against 3 in midfield and try and match them, or do you kind of go, well, we'll let you have the ball a little bit and we'll try and hit you on the counter-attack? And I thought we got the balance just right. I think even if you go 3 against 3, they in midfield, they've got Anderson, Gibbs-White play for England, and Douglas Luiz, who's obviously come back from Juventus, who plays for Brazil. So even if we put Laurent, Luis and Cullen in that midfield, I still think we get overrun, and then it leaves you back 4 exposed. So I don't personally mind that tactic, but I think again, maybe when we do play like a Brentford or Wolves at home, I think we'll go back to playing 3 in midfield. And I think to answer your question on Luis, listen, you can tell it's quality considering it's his first start in the Premier League. I thought he was excellent. He can come in. So he's got the little one coming in now. Freya Steele's first podcast.
He can come in, Freya Steele.
Balancing. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Freya.
Balancing podcast and bedtime at the moment.
She's the new gen, next gen of
next gen of Burnley fans. So yeah, I thought he looked really accomplished. Listen, you can tell he's obviously someone with experience, played at the highest level in the Champions League.
Yeah.
And he got that early booking, which seemed very soft to me.
That was an odd one.
And there was times where you felt like, well, me personally, like he maybe held off a little bit because of that yellow card, but I think he grew and the game got better. That was a great bit of skill when Esteve knocked the header down and he just knocked it past the player and he had a counter-attack. But then to go back to your final point, Natalie, I think the way we play, we are creating opportunities on the transition, and we did against Liverpool. But too many times, that final ball or that final shot isn't good enough.
Yeah,
but I suppose
really
that's the difference between maybe Foster, Anthony, and Shuana, who are worth like 15 million compared to players who are worth 30, 40 million. You can really see that difference.
Definitely. We saw it against Liverpool, and we saw it again on
100%.
Saturday, really massively.
100%, and they are getting better. And I think with Foster, he's obviously playing, the Premier League kind of suits him a bit better, but he's almost trying to play number 10 and the number 9.
Yeah.
And that's really difficult because there's times he's dropping deep, and there's times when the ball goes across our box, so we get a crossing position and he's not there, and we don't have a centre forward. So he's really having to work hard and try and do two jobs at the moment, which isn't easy for me. Which isn't easy for him. So me personally, I think we did get the balance right. But yeah, I think there's certain games this season where you are going to want to have control in the midfield a bit more.
Yeah,
I tell you what, you can tell I've gone back teaching and we moved to Ireland this last week or so. My voice again.
I'm just going to say that. I was like, is this Turf Moor or is this teaching again? It's like,
so some viewers will more obviously moved to Ireland and just started back in work last week, got a job, which was all exciting. So yeah, I can tell my voice is going a little bit shouting at teenagers again.
Out of practice with your little break. Well, let's give you a little break then, shall we, Rich? Because that very point that we had on the difference between Premier League strikers and how our final ball, when we are on the counter and we are trying to get those fine margins and cut across and create some chances, isn't quite there for us yet. We caught up with Tom Whittaker on the Analysis Show team to give us his thoughts. So let's hand over to Tom.
Hello, it's Tom here, just with a few thoughts about the goals or lack thereof in the team in the first few games, the kind of attacking prowess that we're showing. Pretty obvious we're going for a bit of ironically, kind of a Nottingham Forest model, or certainly Nottingham Forest before Postecoglou took over. And we're a low block team, we're sitting deep and we're trying to hit teams on the counter attack, and we've obviously recruited players like Shuana for that purpose. Anthony showed that he's got those kind of counter-attacking chops as well. Obviously, 3 goals already. It's pretty hard to disagree with the output that we're getting from Anthony, although he there's a couple of other good chances that he had on Saturday that he didn't manage to put away, particularly that one right at the start of the second half. Shuana, I think it's coming for him. He's hit the woodwork 3 times now. So unlucky with that free kick. And the fact that it hit the underside of the bar and still didn't bounce over the line or didn't bounce out to anyone just to put it away. Frustrating, but you can see he's got ability and the goal's going to come for him. There's kind of my kind of question marks at the minute over it. They're twofold. One is Foster. I was pretty sceptical that we were going to get much out of Foster at the start of the season, but the first 3 games actually really surprised me, particularly against Sunderland and against Man United. He looked like he had a goal in him, and obviously he did score 1 at United, had 1 wrongly chalked off, had a goal very harshly chalked off against Sunderland as well. She could be sat here on 3 now, and you'd be saying that's a fantastic return from 5 games. But the last couple of games, we can write off Liverpool. No one in the team was really trying to score a goal in that game, I don't think. But against Forest, he was kind of back to what you kind of expect to see from him, which is huffing and puffing, working hard, running his socks off, but never really looking like he's got a goal threat. Just not making the right runs, not getting near post, or not getting on the end of crosses that come across the box. It was very odd to me to see Fleming come on and not Broja, considering the money that we spent on Broja. And it kind of brings me to my other kind of question mark at the minute, which is the use of the subs. That front 3, you can't knock the work rate, the effort. They're running themselves into the ground. But to me, they all looked pretty shattered after 70 minutes on Saturday. And it took Parker too long to get replacements on. You could say, do we have the personnel in terms of wingers? I'd like to see Edwards get a chance in a game like that. I know he's not a workhorse defensively, but he could just give you that little bit of something, couldn't he? I'd like to see him get more of a run out. I think we're only going to see him if we lose him, but it's a shame. And I'd like to see Broja as well. I just want to see what he can do. Hopefully we'll get a chance in the Cardiff game. They're my big concerns, but overall it's early days, and I'll be interested to see how we set up against the lower lights in the division. Up the Clarets. No, they never want
Okay, well that's one end of the pitch, Rich, and I think one thing that I would like to just pick your brains at very quickly before we let you go for this week's recording. I don't want this to become the Kyle Walker show, because it's very clear we've got an incredible talent come into our squad. But this particular performance, I just don't feel like we can go through the entire podcast without acknowledging just what an incredible performance he put in on Saturday.
Yeah, it's, you're kind of still wondering how, even if he's maybe not City's level or that real top elite level of the Premier League, like how we've ended up getting him. You kind of think he would go to the level below that.
In a Burnley shirt. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
And he is the driving force, behind the team in his own way. Again, he's playing that kind of like right centre-back position. But there was a moment in the first half when we went 1-0 down early, and you could see the crowd was a bit flat and the players were a bit flat. Where maybe this is a bit of an experience. He actually broke out of his position to press, and we didn't actually win the ball back, but the ball went back to the goalkeeper, and then the ball came up front. And we won the header. Just something like that, where we kind of like felt that moment in the game. We was a little bit flat, and just something simple of actually going out of his shape and talking about that midfield. He actually went into midfield to press. Kind of like lifted everyone a little bit. And the thing is, he's not quite got that electric pace, but he's still outstanding. He's really good on the ball too. But I think, like, obviously the way Parker sets up in the last two games does help the defence. I think Hartman looks a really, really good signing.
Yeah.
I think we might keep him for another year if we stay up, but I don't think he's going to be at Burnley for long. He's a real quality operator. Estev's getting better with each game. Obviously, Lawrence sorting in. And
this feels like it's the last season with Esteve, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But like I keep saying in my in our WhatsApp group, Ekdal makes me laugh. He literally just stands in the one part of the pitch, which is like between the 6-yard box and almost like just outside the 18-yard area, and he hardly moves. Like, he's just like, what a job he's got. Like, but the thing is with Ekdal, like, you're playing in company's system and he'll look completely out of his depth. But in this system, he's great because he reads the game well. He's great in the air. He's really strong one-on-one defender, and he doesn't really get exposed with his pace. You did see that a little bit at United when we was very open in midfield. He did get exposed. So, yeah, like I said, all over the pitch. And we've always said this, haven't we? There was a little bit of trepidation coming into this season because of a bit of scarring from the company season. And I think 5 games in, we know we're going to have a team who's going to be competitive. That team is giving absolutely everything. Like I said, even the lads coming off the bench, are giving their all. Going back to Hannibal, like he started the season and he's come off the bench. I know we give that penalty away, but like you can't question his attitude, and his work rate and his ethics. Even like Hannibal won that free kick in the last minute when he drove up the right-hand side. And who knows, on another day, like that could have led to a goal. Ekdal had a half a chance and the keeper saved it. So, yeah, I think the 5 at the back is kind of like, it's a 5 and then it does go into a 4 and it's quite fluid. I think it's working quite well at the moment. But I think the real test will be obviously when we play. And to be fair, we did it against Sunderland, but maybe against Leeds, are we willing to be a little bit more fluid in midfield? But I think moving forward to City next week, I think he could play 7 at the back, to be honest. We'll see what formation he sets up with her.
There you go, listeners. That is Rich's unified, plan to get a point away at City. Let's just play 7 at the back.
Yeah, I think so.
It is. Right, I'm conscious that it's just you and me this week, and we've already kept you for quite a long time. So
it's all good.
There.
No, it's all good. We all love talking.
Yeah, it is good. No, it is really good. I'm trying to protect your voice, and I'm trying to protect you. So I think just let's just wrap up this podcast. I think let's just address very quickly the mental resilience of this squad. That's point number 1. One of the things that I think it was you who put this in the group thread, that the Vincent Kompany side loses that and loses it by a significant margin. And secondly, what as we're going into the first like really horrible, like the fixture, City away, which has traditionally not been a good one for us, how have the first 4 games of the season made you feel? Like, how would you feeling generally speaking about the squad? So Tupac to finish us off.
Yeah, I think like the resilience is outstanding from the group. I think we've seen it on Twitter in our WhatsApp group. I think that game against if we went 1-0 down in that game in the company, we would have easily lost 3 or 4-0. You know, we wouldn't have been willing to do the hard yards. And it goes back to your point about like Walker, Dubravka. You know, we've signed some really experienced players in there. And what I love about this team, like, there's no one who's like, there's no players who are like waving their arms up at each other or kind of saying, what are you doing? If someone does lose the ball, it's part of football. They're all working hard to get it back. And the thing that's the start to the season, it's the 5 or 4 games. I think there's 5 games gone, isn't there? 3.
Oh, yeah, no, there is 5. Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
3.
When I said 4, I was like, 4.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
you see, there's 5.
I think if you look at it before the start of the season, and maybe after Tottenham away, where we did some good things, but we lost quite comfortably in the end.
Yeah.
To be disappointed to only have 4 points with the fixtures we have, I think it's a really, really good sign.
I agree.
Like I said, City away, I don't think we'll get battered like we have done in the other eras. You know, again, I kind of think it's going to be difficult for us to score the way we set. It'll be a very, very similar setup to Liverpool.
Yeah.
And I don't think City are as good as they have been either. And we're definitely not going to give Haaland that space in behind, but he is still that one striker who you kind of give that chance to. You know, you think he'll put it away. So it'll be a tough, Villa will still, it'd be interesting Villa away. I think Villa will be a good yardstick because they've struggled so far this season, but you're seeing how comfortable Sunderland were against them really with 10 men for an hour. Yeah. So I definitely think we can get somewhere there. And then I think after the international break is when you really get into the role and the momentum of the season starts to go because, you've got like a longer window to play in, and we've got some more favourable fixtures. So I do think this team have got the capability to, when, again, they're getting better game by game by game and they get a little bit more consistent and a little bit more precise in the final third, I do think we can go on a good little run where we win like two on a bounce or get kind of like 7 points out of 9. I do think this team have got that in them. And I think another thing is maybe on a more negative side, Leeds and Sunderland have done maybe better than expected. But then on the positive,
favourable fixtures though.
More favourable fixtures than us, but I still don't think any Premier League games, like everyone can talk about Leeds, but how happy would we be to get a 0-0 draw at home against Newcastle? This is just me being not biased, but no, I agree. They definitely have better fixtures, but I think the positive.
Just one pause there, Rich. Are Newcastle that much better than Forest this season in this early stages? Do you think so?
I think they'll end up coming higher
right now.
Forest, so it's hard to judge this, and it's so early, isn't it? But I do think what's a good thing is that like you've got, you would expect Villa to climb the table, but you've got Brentford, Wolves, and West Ham all below us.
Yeah.
So it's not just going to be like, well, yeah, exactly. So I think there's some other teams there where you could easily identify that we could come above, and even though I think Sunderland will be strong, and I think they'll have a good chance of staying up. I think at some point they'll go on a bad run, and again when the fixtures get tougher. So I think the confidence will be, we know we've played ultimately the best team in the league. Liverpool aren't quite at the best, but the scoring goals. You see in the first half against Everton, they scored. In like the first 20 minutes, they scored 2. They scored 3 against obviously a really good Atletico Madrid side. So for us to, nullify him to a last-minute penalty for a moment of madness is a really good sign. And like I said, you kind of hope that the football gods will be with us on Saturday, that the luck goes in our favour and we manage to get a goal and somehow maybe get a result at City. Because at some point in the season, you do have to pick points up against the better sides. But yeah, this is one of them games. At the start of the season, it's kind of like, well, a free hit kind of. And I suppose the 2 games where you'd be thinking, well, we need to get points out of, we've got 4 points, which is a good return. So,
yeah, I agree. Good stuff. Excellent. Rich, superb analysis as ever. Thank you so much for joining me this week. That has been a fantastic look back. Listeners, that's all we've got time for this analysis show. Join us this weekend for the preview show where we'll be looking ahead at that City game. Through behind the sofa, through closed eyes, Dave, I'm sure we'll have all the painful stats for us all. My thanks go to everybody who has helped contribute to this episode, especially you, the listener, for downloading and listening. Please do stick around, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you never miss a single episode of The Known and Ever. And do share where you can, please. It helps the channel grow and helps us continue to create your podcast. We will be back next week with a look back on that City result and hopefully, for the first time ever, some points. Who knows? I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.
The No Nay Never podcast is brought to you in association with the talkSPORT Fan Network. Our host and editor is Natalie Bromley, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The Analysis Show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Rich Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby and Adam Dennett. Our music is provided by George Gaskell, and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting nonaynever.substack.com. Thanks as ever go to our partners talkSPORT. We are proud to be associated with the talkSPORT Fan Network.